So on the evening of Thursday the 19th of December, I just had a feeling. So I opened up my phone to see that Prismatic Evolutions pre-orders had come back into stock at Big W. I jumped inside to load up the site on my computer, which it turns out was a terrible idea because this happened. Okay, I'm not in the tech industry, so take my analysis with a massive heap of salt. So just diagnosing the issue based off the symptoms, it seems that Big W's website couldn't handle the amount of visitors it was receiving, which probably means their server nodes were overloaded, making them unable to send or receive data packets. Now, if you're Australian, this might remind you of what happened during the plebiscite, and for my international viewers, you might be expecting me to cut to the timeless classic, Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, but unfortunately you didn't hit your head and wake up in 2007, and this actually happened to a major retailer in 2024. So this tells us that Big W is probably using localized and centralized servers, which are very vulnerable to this type of issue. Not only that, but I can't see any evidence of a bot detection system. I'm not saying they don't have one, I just personally can't see the evidence for it. Needless to say, by the time the site started working again, all the Prismatic Evolutions pre-orders were gone. I hear a lot of talk about AI scalper bots, but honestly, judging from what I see here, I'm pretty sure this entire operation could have been carried out with a slight modification of the kind of eBay bid bots that have been around since 2005. Now, who's doing it and why? So this was, at the time, the second time that Big W restocked Prismatic Evolutions pre-orders in December 2024, and look, I can't prove anything, but literally both times it happened, a lesser-known card store suddenly had Prismatic Evolutions pre-orders in stock the next day. Now, I don't want to name any names here because I can't actually prove that either of you did it, and I don't want to say anything defamatory, but straight up, this is very suspicious even if the evidence is purely circumstantial. And if you've been following the Aus Pokemon market as much as I have and you think you have a pretty good idea of who I'm talking about, you might be wondering, why would they do it? They didn't put anything on top of the price. And that's a great question. Remember what I said in the last video about retailers during the 90s comic book crash? The similarity with our situation now is that retailers are popping up left, right, and center trying to get on the cash train, but the difference is the supply and demand of the underlying product. Comic book stores failed in the 90s because there was too many of them relative to the demand of the product, but with Pokemon we've got not enough. And because of that, all of the different stores are competing very heavily for your attention and loyalty, which is usually a good thing for the customer, but in this case it's like having 5 different cafes in a town that only has one loaf of bread. Not only does this add negative value for the consumer, it's just not a viable long-term business model. Considering as well that the Pokemon company is moving allocations away from smaller card stores, and yeah, I really do believe that most of you who jumped on this bandwagon thinking it was a get-rich-quick scheme won't be around for long. It's just such a fucked supply chain. The Pokemon company produces it in California, where it arrives to Australia by freighter, gets trucked out to a Big W storehouse, where it then gets scalped online by someone who puts it up on their own store, where it gets scalped again by someone with an eBay store, and meanwhile a truck is driving the product to and from each location before it even gets marketed towards the actual consumer? What the fuck? I mean, look at this shit. Multiple people on eBay Australia have already decided to try and gut their ETB pre-orders and sell the promo card individually for 50% of the product's original price. And I'm definitely not against sellers in general, obviously. But when the distributor is the one making the effort to import the product into our country and arbitrage its value, and the sales front is entirely online, the only thing that matters to the consumer is who's got the best price. And in this context, it's actually the big faceless corporation that wants to sell me the product I want at a price I'm willing to pay, and the little guy does nothing but add an extra degree of separation between me and that same product while expecting 200% of the product's original price for the service. Like, dude, I'm not trying to score a fucking bag here for fuck's sake. It's Pokemon cards, okay? Pokemon cards. Can't a card game just be a card game? So remember in the last video how I explained that our financial advice laws only apply to certain products? It's the same thing here. We do have anti-scalping laws, but they only apply to the sale of concert tickets. Once again, zero logic or consistency. And this scalping shit has negative effects that bleed over not only to the consumer, but even the producer. Only having the option to purchase goods for double or more their regular retail price through shady eBay sellers pushes people out of the hobby and less likely to buy Pokemon cards at all. So for all of you people who think that the Pokemon company creates all this FOMO on purpose to drive prices up, why exactly would they do that when they only see profits from the first transaction in the entire chain? They're a business, guys. They want to sell you as many cards as they possibly can. And looking at this from the most zoomed out lens possible, how are Pokemon supposed to know what the actual demand is? If people want to collect this set but don't have the option to buy except through scalpers, they may just not buy. And this could be a key reason why the hottest sets always end up getting underprinted in their initial run. If a huge percentage of us who want to buy cards look at the market and decide to dip out, then what actual metrics does the Pokemon company have to judge the demand? I already explained in the last video that there's a difference between what gets views on social media and what actually sells. And I understand you're all just gonna laugh at me and call me a crazy person for being this upset about a children's card game, but here's my position. If back when I was a kid, if I went to the store and got told there was no Pokemon cards because people were hoarding them and reselling them, I would have honestly cried my fucking eyes out. I genuinely don't understand how anyone who loved Pokemon as a kid could ever sleep at night knowing that their livelihood depended on robbing children of that same experience. That's more scummy than what most actual criminals do. As for the Prismatic Evolutions launch, I'm certainly hoping that Australians know better than to act like this, but judging from what I'm seeing online, I kinda doubt it. The predicament for me is that if I try and just buy a few boosters for myself, then there's less on the shelves by the time the parents finish work and pick their kids up. But if I don't, there's a very good chance that scalpers will just take them all anyway. Now, I can't really fix the whole problem here by myself, but I have come up with a way to make sure that at least some Pokemon cards make their way to the people who need them the most, at least in my local area. We'll have to save that for later because I have to end this video.